After World War II, the world entered a new era, an era of fear known as the Cold War. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, did not clash directly with nuclear weapons, but instead plunged into proxy wars, where every land, every nation could become a chessboard. And Vietnam, a small strip of land by the Pacific Ocean, suddenly became one of those fateful pieces. In the United States' eyes, South Vietnam was not merely a country, but a bastion against communism in Southeast Asia, a wall meant to block the spread of the red tide. They believed that if Vietnam fell, the entire region would collapse in a domino effect, a fear that haunted America for 2 decades. But from the very moment they stepped in, the United States made a fatal mistake. They did not understand who the Vietnamese were or what they were fighting for. While Washington viewed the conflict as an ideological test between capitalism and communism, the Vietnamese saw it as a continuation of their long struggle for independence, another chapter in a 1,000-year tradition of resisting foreign invaders. For the Americans, this was a limited war, one that could be managed from afar with weapons, money, and strategy. But for the Vietnamese, it was a war for survival, where every citizen, every village, and every jungle became part of the front line. That difference was not merely a matter of perception, it was the root cause of America's strategic blindness. They had no clear objective and could not define what victory truly meant. Was it to stop the spread of communism? To keep South Vietnam from falling? Or to destroy the Viet Cong completely? The deeper they sank into the conflict, the less they understood whom they were fighting for or why. In the brightly lit offices of the Pentagon, American generals believed that with enough bombs they could force Vietnam into submission. But in the forests of the Cherson Mountains, thin figures wearing rubber sandals believed in something else. Nothing is more precious than independence and freedom. And it was that belief, not weapons, that ultimately defined the entire war. The Vietnam War, therefore, did not begin with hatred, but with misunderstanding. A superpower entered the battlefield with the strength of technology and the ambition of dominance, while a small nation rose up with the yearning for freedom and dignity. When ideals do not align, when goals remain unclear, then no matter how many dollars are spent or how many soldiers are deployed, a nation may find itself fighting a war it does not even understand. And that was the beginning of the tragedy, a tragedy the world would later know by just 2 words: Vietnam. When the United States fully plunged into the Vietnam War, it believed that its overwhelming military power would quickly decide the fate of a small nation in the East. They possessed things no enemy in history had ever held in such quantity: napalm bombs that could incinerate an entire forest in seconds, B-52 bombers capable of tearing up hundreds of hectares of land, roaring Huey helicopters dominating the skies, and massive M48 tanks rolling heavily across every terrain. To Washington, this was a modern industrial war against a peasant army. But Vietnam was not a European-style battlefield, and the Vietnamese did not fight like any army the U.S. had ever faced. There were no clear fronts, no fixed lines, no victory measured by the meters of land captured. This was a people's war, one where the boundary between soldier and civilian blurred, where every village could become a battlefield and every citizen could become part of the front line. American soldiers were used to battles where numbers, firepower, and speed decided the outcome. But in Vietnam, they faced an enemy that could melt into the jungle, turn the night into an ally, and use every river, forest, and tunnel as a weapon. Vietnamese soldiers lived in tunnels for months, emerged only when necessary, and moved under cover of darkness, rooted among the people. When America bombed the forests, the Vietnamese were already deep underground. When American tanks entered the villages, the guerrillas had blended into the crowd, only to reappear at night, silent, swift, and as sudden as the darkness itself. For American soldiers, Vietnam was a place of constant fear, not because the enemy was too strong, but because they never knew where the enemy was. They could seize a village by day with helicopters and tanks, yet by night, that same land returned to the hands of peasants with rifles. Every military victory turned hollow because it lacked the one thing that truly mattered: the hearts of the people. America's greatest mistake was not a shortage of weapons, but a shortage of understanding. They measured success by the number of enemy kills, while the Vietnamese measured it by their belief that as long as one person still stood, the war was not over. The Americans thought they could force surrender through bombs and bullets, but they never understood that their opponent fought not only with guns, but with memory, with pride, and with a burning will never to be enslaved again. And so, every B-52 raid, every search and destroy mission, every massive U.S. operation only deepened the war, not in the direction America hoped, but in the growth of Vietnamese unity and hatred toward the invader. In the jungles, beneath the ground, and among villages ravaged by bombs, that spirit still burned, stronger than any cannon, more enduring than any tank. Industrial power could crush the soil, but it could never crush the soul of a people. The war in Vietnam, therefore, was not merely a clash between two armies, but between a mechanical civilization and the human will. And in the end, the weapon that brought America to defeat was not the gun, but the heart of the people, something they never truly understood. Throughout American history, no war had ever entered the living rooms of its citizens so nakedly. Not through propaganda posters, not through tales of imaginary heroes, but through reality itself. Footage of blood, fire, and tears, broadcast live every evening on national television. For the first time, war was no longer a story far away. It was the roar of Huey helicopters interwoven with the evening news. It was the ash-covered face of an American soldier holding a comrade in despair. It was the image of Vietnamese children running naked through a rain of napalm. Each frame was like a knife driven deep into the heart of America, accomplishing something no army ever could, turning an entire nation against its own war. At first, television was allowed to show only official reports, depicting the war as a mission to defend freedom. But then, when the raw images flooded in, fallen American soldiers along roads, villages burned to the ground, people wailing amid rubble, Americans began to ask themselves, what are we really fighting for? That question became the first crack in the faith of an entire nation. Between 1967 and 1969, the anti-war movement erupted. College students marched in the streets, holding signs that read, "Make love, not war." Music became a weapon. Bob Dylan sang "Blowin' in the Wind." Creedence Clearwater Revival shouted, "Fortunate Son," anti-war songs spreading across America. On the streets, thousands protested. In Congress, legislators confronted each other sharply. Inside the White House, faith in Johnson's quick victory began to crumble. The media was no longer a tool of propaganda. It became a second front. A front where bullets could not reach, but images carried a destructive power greater than any bomb. Every evening broadcast, every newspaper article, every photograph from the Vietnam front became a bullet aimed straight at the heart of American belief. And once that belief collapsed, every military victory became meaningless. Because how can you win a war when your own people no longer believe in it?
In the mid-1960s, Washington believed that with enough bombs, enough money, and enough military advisors, they could turn Vietnam into a democratic stronghold in Southeast Asia. But that was the root mistake, a mistake of perception, not tactics. For America entered Vietnam with a military map, but without a cultural map. They did not understand that this land had endured thousands of years of resistance against foreign invaders, that in the Vietnamese consciousness, the concept of independence was not merely a political slogan, it was the soul of the nation. America thought it could teach the Vietnamese democracy through force. But how can you teach a people who already know the cost of lost freedom? How can you lecture about the will to be free to those who grew up with folk sayings like, "When invaders come to the house, even women must fight"? In Saigon, the Americans set up ally governments, but they forgot that a government cannot survive if it is seen as alien by its people. These regimes were weak, corrupt, and trapped in urban illusions, while most of the population lived in the countryside, where war, poverty, and injustice were daily realities. America tried to build a South Vietnam in the American image, with Coca-Cola, rock music, and jeeps. But on the other side, barefoot soldiers carried something America could not produce: absolute belief. In the North, there was a disciplined, unified organization that knew how to harness the power of spirit and tradition. They lacked advanced weaponry, but possessed something Americans underestimated: the unity of the people. They did not fight merely for an ideology, but for memories of thousands of years of resisting foreign invaders. And so, the war became a test between technology and conviction. One side had helicopters, napalm bombs, and offshore artillery. The other had rubber sandals, hidden tunnels, and an indomitable will. When these forces clashed, what seemed stronger became weak. Weapons can kill people, but they cannot kill the will to live free. This was America's greatest strategic error. They thought they could export the American model, freedom, democracy, consumerism, to a country with its own identity and beliefs. But Vietnam was not a blank page for others to paint their dreams upon. It was a civilization with history, resilience, and a soul. And that soul cannot be reprogrammed with bombs or slogans. As the last rays of sunset fell over Saigon in April 1975, history closed a painful chapter of the 20th century. On the roof of the U.S. Embassy, the final helicopters carried soldiers, staff, and the stunned realization of a superpower forced to retreat in chaos. Below, thousands of people crowded desperately, searching for a way out. Meanwhile, the Pacific Ocean silently witnessed an unexpected defeat. The United States, the most powerful nation on the planet, had lost in a small country in the East. After more than 20 years of war, millions of tons of bombs had been dropped. Over 58,000 American soldiers had died, and millions of Vietnamese, from fighters to civilians, had perished. Yet, in the end, all these numbers could not answer a simple question. What were they fighting for? Americans could conquer space, set foot on the moon, but in Vietnam, they encountered something bombs could not destroy: the human will. Vietnam did not fight to conquer others, but to preserve itself. Not for territory, not for gold, but for the belief that freedom cannot be granted, it can only be earned. The war ended, but its echoes never fade. It left scorched forests, fields poisoned by Agent Orange, and countless souls who would never return. The world looked back at Vietnam and realized that this was not merely a military conflict, but a symbol of humanity. The weak overcoming the strong, determination triumphing over technology, and the spirit of a nation prevailing over imperial ambition. For the United States, it was not just a wound, but a mirror. They realized that military power cannot replace cultural understanding, that technology cannot replace justice, and that even the mightiest nation cannot impose its model on a people with their own history and soul. Since Vietnam, America has been more cautious when intervening in other countries. The ghosts of Saigon still linger in every step they take in Iraq, Afghanistan, or Syria. For the lesson was profound. No victory is complete without understanding and the support of the people.